The browser window glowed like a neon confession in our darkened living room. I stood behind Kelly's chair, coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips, reading words that rewrote our entire marriage in real time. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again, D. Same hotel, same room, 5 p.m. tomorrow. My wife of 14 years had left her laptop open like a loaded weapon on the kitchen counter. The message thread stretched back weeks, each entry more explicit than the last. My freelance copywriter brain automatically cataloged the details. Derek, gym owner, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, room 237 at the Marriott downtown. Matt? Kelly's voice drifted from upstairs. Did you finish the dishes? I closed the laptop with surgical precision. Just wrapping up, honey. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a former investigative journalist reduced to writing marketing copy for dental practices, while my ambitious lawyer wife climbed the corporate ladder one affair at a time. She'd always complained I lacked ambition. Apparently, she'd found someone who met her standards. Kelly appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair perfect despite the late hour, wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked beautiful, successful, and completely foreign to me. We need to talk, she said, settling into the chair where she'd left her digital confession. I've been thinking about our relationship. I leaned against the counter, adopting the casual pose I'd perfected during countless interviews with lying politicians. What about it? We've grown apart, Matt. We want different things. She touched the laptop absently. I think we should consider an open marriage. Give ourselves permission to explore other connections. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd already been exploring for months, and now wanted retroactive permission. I sipped my coffee, buying time while my mind raced through possibilities. That's quite a suggestion, I said finally. Very modern of you. Her shoulders relaxed. She'd expected a fight, tears, masculine rage. Instead, I was giving her the intellectual response she could handle. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Kelly said. Some men would react badly to the idea of their wives needing more than they can provide. The insult landed like she'd intended, but I absorbed it without flinching. So you want to see other people? I want us both to have that freedom. You could benefit from it too, Matt. Maybe find someone who appreciates your particular qualities. Translation: find someone as mediocre as yourself. I nodded thoughtfully, already planning my next move. You know what, Kelly? You're absolutely right. We should both explore what's out there. I set down my mug and walked over to kiss her forehead. Thanks for being honest with me. She blinked, clearly thrown by my calm acceptance. So you're okay with this? I'm more than okay with it. I'm excited. I smiled the same smile I'd used when interviewing corrupt city councilmen. When do we start? That night, I lay in bed listening to Kelly's satisfied breathing while planning her destruction. She wanted an open marriage? Fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial about her husband. I'd spent 15 years learning how to destroy people with nothing but words and persistence. Politicians, CEOs, dirty cops. I'd brought them all down with careful investigation and strategic exposure. Kelly had just declared war on someone who fought with information instead of emotions. She was about to discover that her boring, unambitious husband had hidden talents she'd never bothered to notice. The next morning, Kelly left for work with unusual enthusiasm, practically skipping to her BMW. I watched from our bedroom window as she drove away, then immediately got to work. Her laptop password was our wedding anniversary. Touching, really. Her email revealed the full scope of her deception. Derek Morrison, owner of Elite Fitness downtown, 34 years old, divorced, and apparently Kelly's definition of a real man. Their correspondence painted a picture of my wife I barely recognized. She described me as emotionally unavailable and stuck in the past, while Derek represented raw masculinity and someone who knows what he wants. I screenshot everything, created encrypted backups, and began building a timeline. The affair had started 3 months ago, during Kelly's girls' night out phase. Brianna Walsh, her best friend from law school, had introduced them at some networking event. Brianna. Now there was an interesting detail. I remembered her from Kelly's law firm parties, a sharp-tongued PR executive who'd always treated me like furniture. She'd made several pointed comments over the years about Kelly settling for someone beneath her ambitions. My phone buzzed with a text from Kelly. Working late tonight, don't wait up. I smiled. Room 237, Marriott downtown, 5 p.m. I wouldn't dream of missing it. The Marriott's parking garage provided excellent surveillance opportunities. I positioned myself with a clear view of both entrances and waited. At 4:47 p.m., Kelly's BMW pulled into a space near the elevator. She'd changed clothes since morning. Gone was the conservative business suit, replaced by a red dress that screamed availability. Derek arrived 12 minutes later in a black pickup truck, with Elite Fitness emblazoned on the side. He was exactly what I'd expected, tall, muscled, and walking with the swagger of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. I watched them embrace in the parking garage, Kelly's laugh echoing off concrete walls. They looked happy, comfortable, like they'd done this many times before. Instead of following them inside, I walked to Derek's truck. The doors were unlocked. Apparently, real men didn't worry about security. I left the interior untouched, but removed the valve caps from all 4 tires, letting out just enough air to create a slow leak. Then I placed a single condom on his dashboard with a note. For your protection, you'll need it. As I walked back to my car, movement in a window across the street caught my attention. Someone was watching from a 3rd-floor apartment, silhouetted against interior light. When they realized I'd noticed, the figure stepped back into shadow. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice work. Want to team up? I stared at the message, then looked back at the apartment window. Empty now. But I had the distinct feeling I'd just gained an ally, or acquired another enemy. In my experience, the difference was often impossible to determine until it was too late. Alex lived in the converted warehouse across from our suburban street, a modern anomaly among the colonial revivals and Cape Cods. I'd noticed them before, always in athletic wear, always alone, always watching the neighborhood with the intensity of someone cataloging secrets. The morning after the hotel incident, I found Alex waiting by my mailbox. Matt, right? I'm Alex Chen. They extended a firm handshake. I think we need to talk. Up close, Alex was striking in an androgynous way that probably drove people crazy trying to categorize them. Sharp cheekbones, athletic build, eyes that missed nothing. About what? I asked, though I suspected I knew. About your wife's afternoon activities, and about Brianna Walsh's little game. That got my attention. What do you know about Brianna? Alex glanced around the empty street. Not here. Come by tonight around 8. I'll explain everything. They walked away before I could respond, leaving me with more questions than answers. I spent the day researching Alex Chen. Public records showed they'd bought the warehouse conversion 2 years ago, paying cash. Before that, the trail went cold. No social media presence, no professional history I could find. Either Alex was very private or very good at hiding their past. At 8 sharp, I knocked on their door. The interior was minimalist perfection. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, expensive furniture arranged with geometric precision. Art covered the walls, mostly abstract pieces that probably cost more than my car. Drink? Alex offered, gesturing toward a well-stocked bar. Whiskey, neat. They poured 2 glasses and settled into a leather chair across from me. So, how long have you known about Derek? Found out yesterday. How long have you known? I see everything that happens on this street, Matt. Your wife's been sneaking around for months, but she's not the real problem. Alex leaned forward, fixing me with those intense eyes. Brianna Walsh set this whole thing up. She introduced Kelly to Derek, encouraged the affair, probably suggested the open marriage idea too. Why would she do that? Because she has a grudge against you. Remember that PR scandal about 5 years ago? The city councilman taking kickbacks from developers? I remembered. It had been one of my last big investigative pieces before the newspaper folded. What does that have to do with Brianna? She was the PR firm spinning the story, trying to make the councilman look innocent. Your investigation destroyed her client and cost her firm a fortune in lost contracts. The pieces clicked into place. Brianna had been playing a long game, using my wife as a weapon against me. The affair wasn't about Kelly's happiness. It was about my humiliation. How do you know all this? I asked. Alex smiled mysteriously. I make it my business to know things. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I finished my whiskey, feeling the burn settle in my chest. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. They think I'm a boring, unambitious failure? Perfect. They'll never see me coming. Good. Alex refilled my glass. Because I have some ideas about how to make this really interesting. We talked until midnight, sharing information and planning strategies. Alex had been watching the neighborhood like a hawk, cataloging affairs, financial problems, and family secrets. They knew which marriages were failing, which teenagers were dealing substances, which seemingly perfect families were one scandal away from collapse. "Why are you helping me?" I asked as I prepared to leave. Alex walked me to the door, standing close enough that I caught their scent, something expensive and complex. "Because I hate bullies, Matt. And because you're more interesting than you think." The compliment hit harder than it should have. When was the last time Kelly had called me interesting? "One more thing," Alex said as I stepped outside. "Derek's not just sleeping with your wife. He's blackmailing her too. Photos, videos, the works. She's been paying him to keep quiet." I stopped walking. "How much?" "5,000 last month. Another 3,000 2 weeks ago." My wife was paying for the privilege of being cheated on. The humiliation was complete, or would be, once I figured out how to use this information. "Alex," I called back. "Tomorrow night, Kelly's hosting a dinner party. Brianna will be there, along with some colleagues from the law firm. You should come." "Wouldn't miss it," Alex replied. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself, and maybe a camera." Kelly spent all day preparing for what she called a casual dinner with friends. She'd invited 6 people from her law firm, plus Brianna, turning our dining room into a stage for her performance as the sophisticated hostess. I played my role perfectly. The supportive husband, quietly competent in the kitchen, invisible unless needed. Kelly's colleagues barely acknowledged me beyond polite nods. To them, I was just another suburban husband, lucky to have married above my station. Brianna arrived fashionably late, air-kissing Kelly and scanning the room like a predator evaluating prey. She wore all black, dress, jewelry, even her lipstick had a dark undertone. When she spotted me arranging appetizers, her smile turned sharp. "Matt, still writing those little marketing pieces?" "Someone has to pay for Kelly's shopping habits," I replied with a self-deprecating laugh. The doorbell rang at exactly 7:30. Alex stood on my porch wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. They looked stunning, masculine and feminine simultaneously, confident in a way that commanded attention. "You must be Alex," Kelly said, extending her hand. "Matt mentioned you're our new neighbor." "Guilty as charged." Alex's smile was warm but calculated. "Thank you for including me." I watched Brianna's reaction carefully. She studied Alex with professional interest, clearly trying to place them in her mental database of useful contacts. Dinner conversation flowed around typical topics: work, politics, neighborhood gossip. Alex contributed just enough to seem engaged while observing everyone with those sharp eyes. I caught them watching Brianna particularly closely whenever Kelly spoke. "So Alex," Brianna said during dessert, "what brings you to our little suburban paradise?" "Change of scenery. I got tired of the city pace." Alex's tone was casual, but I detected an undercurrent of something harder. "Sometimes you need to step back and reassess your priorities." "What kind of work do you do?" "Consulting. I help people solve problems they can't handle themselves." The answer was deliberately vague, and Brianna's eyes narrowed slightly. She sensed a player, but couldn't determine the game. After dinner, guests migrated to the living room for drinks. I excused myself to clean up, giving Alex and Brianna space to circle each other like sharks. From the kitchen, I could hear fragments of conversation. "Impressive place you have. Matt seems like a devoted husband. Kelly's very lucky." When I returned with coffee, Alex was sitting beside Kelly on the couch, while Brianna watched from across the room with barely concealed irritation. "Alex was just telling me about their art collection," Kelly said, slightly breathless. "Apparently they have an original Rothko." "Just a small piece," Alex said modestly. "I believe in surrounding myself with beautiful things." Their eyes met Kelly's as they spoke, and I watched my wife's cheeks flush. Alex was flirting, subtly, expertly, and right under everyone's noses. Brianna excused herself to use the restroom, and I followed a moment later, intercepting her in the hallway. "Interesting friend you've brought," she said quietly. "Alex is full of surprises." "I'll bet." Brianna's smile was calculating. "You should be careful, Matt. People like that usually want something." "People like what?" "Rich, attractive, available. They don't move to suburbia for the scenery." I pretended to consider this. "You think Alex is interested in Kelly?" "I think Alex is interested in whatever serves their purposes. And your wife is exactly the type to fall for someone mysterious and sophisticated." Brianna was trying to plant seeds of jealousy, probably hoping I'd make a scene that would embarrass Kelly in front of her colleagues. Instead, I nodded thoughtfully. You might be right. I should pay attention. When we returned to the living room, Alex was showing Kelly something on their phone. Art photos, apparently. But Kelly was leaning close enough to smell Alex's cologne. The evening wound down around 10. Guests thanked Kelly for a lovely dinner, complimented the food, and promised to reciprocate soon. Brianna lingered, clearly hoping to speak with Alex privately. But they left with the first wave of departures. Interesting evening, Kelly said as we loaded the dishwasher. Alex certainly made an impression. They're very sophisticated, worldly. Kelly's tone held a note I recognized, the same breathless quality she'd had when first describing Derek. Attractive, too, I added casually. Kelly's hands stilled on the wine glasses. I suppose so. I hadn't really noticed. The lie came so easily I almost believed it myself. My wife was already imagining Alex as her next conquest, probably planning how to work them into her open marriage fantasy. Perfect. Let Kelly think she was playing the game. She had no idea that Alex and I were playing an entirely different sport. My phone buzzed with a text. Phase 1 complete. Kelly took the bait beautifully. Ready for Phase 2? I smiled as I deleted the message. Tomorrow, things would get much more interesting. Kelly started finding excuses to jog past Alex's building. She'd returned from these runs glowing with exercise and possibility, chattering about running into our interesting neighbor, and having brief conversations about art, travel, and life philosophy. Alex lived in Paris for 2 years, she announced over breakfast, studying at the Sorbonne. Impressive, I murmured, not looking up from my laptop. They speak 4 languages fluently, and they've been to places I've only dreamed about. Tokyo, Istanbul, Buenos Aires, everything Derek wasn't, in other words. Where he was local and predictable, Alex was worldly and mysterious. Kelly was already transferring her fantasies to a more sophisticated target. I let this continue for a week before making my next move. I've been thinking about your open marriage idea, I said one evening as Kelly prepared for another late night at the office. She froze, mascara wand halfway to her lashes. Oh, you were right about us growing apart. Maybe we both need to explore other connections. That's very mature of you, Matt. I might ask Alex out for coffee. Get to know them better. The mascara wand clattered into the sink. Alex, our neighbor Alex. They seem interesting, sophisticated, well-traveled, attractive. I shrugged. Exactly the kind of person who might appreciate my particular qualities. Kelly's reflection in the mirror showed pure panic. She'd expected me to find some appropriate suburban divorcee, not pursue the same person who'd captured her imagination. I don't think that's a good idea, she said carefully. Why not? I thought you wanted us both to have freedom. I do, but Alex is our neighbor. It could get complicated. More complicated than you sleeping with Derek Morrison. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly turned slowly, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and finally defiance. How long have you known? Does it matter? The point is, you've been exploring other connections for months. Now it's my turn. She sat heavily on the bed, designer dress wrinkled, makeup half finished. Matt, I never meant for you to find out like this. How did you mean for me to find out? During the divorce proceedings? There's not going to be a divorce. Derek is just temporary, a phase. I almost laughed. A phase you've been paying for? Her face went white. What do you mean? The bank statements, Kelly. $5,000 in March, $3,000 2 weeks ago. What's Derek charging for his services these days? She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. He has photos, videos. He said if I didn't pay, he'd send them to everyone. My firm, my parents, our friends. The admission came out in a rush, followed by tears that smeared her carefully applied makeup. My wife, brilliant, ambitious, successful Kelly, had been reduced to paying blackmail to a gym owner with a camera phone. I should have felt sorry for her. Instead, I felt something colder and more calculating. How much does he want total? 20,000. He says after that, we're even. And you believe him? Kelly's laugh was bitter. I don't have a choice. I walked to my dresser and pulled out a manila envelope I'd prepared weeks ago. Actually, you do. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were printed screenshots of Derek's social media, bank records I'd obtained through less than legal means, and photos of him with at least 3 other women. Derek's been running this scam for 2 years, I explained. You're not his first victim. just his most profitable. He targets successful women, seduces them, documents everything, then demands payment for silence. Kelly sank into the chair, studying the evidence. How did you get all this? I used to be an investigative journalist, remember? I know how to research people. What do you want me to do? Nothing. I'll handle Derek. But first, we need to talk about Brianna. Kelly looked up sharply. What about her? She introduced you to Derek, didn't she? Encouraged the affair? Suggested the open marriage? She was trying to help. She said I deserved better than... Kelly stopped, realizing what she'd almost said. Better than me? Yes, I'm sure she did. I sat on the bed beside her. Did she ever mention my investigation into Councilman Richards? The story that destroyed his career and cost her PR firm millions in lost contracts? Understanding dawned slowly across Kelly's features. She's been using me to get back at you. Very good. Your friend Brianna orchestrated this entire situation. The affair, the blackmail, your humiliation. It's all been revenge for something that happened years before she even met you. Kelly stared at the photos of Derek with other women, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite read. What happens now? She asked finally. Now we give everyone exactly what they deserve. Numanliami numath, with Othamlathpi, Nikas no andari. To her credit, once she understood how thoroughly she'd been manipulated, she committed fully to the revenge. Derek's expecting his final payment tonight, she said, reviewing our strategy one last time. 20,000 in cash, room 237 at the Marriott. And Brianna? I told her I was ending things with Derek and focusing on Alex instead. She's planning to intercept Alex at the coffee shop on 5th Street at 7. I checked my watch, 6:15. Perfect. That gives us 45 minutes. Alex had agreed to play their part, leading Brianna on a wild goose chase while Kelly and I dealt with Derek. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. We were giving everyone exactly what they thought they wanted, right up until the moment we pulled the rug out. The Marriott parking garage felt different this time. Instead of hiding in shadows, I walked confidently toward the elevator, with Kelly beside me. She carried a briefcase that looked like it contained 20,000 in cash. Actually, it held newspaper cut to size and a digital recorder. You sure about this? Kelly asked as we rode to the second floor. Trust me. Derek answered the door, wearing only a hotel bathrobe, clearly expecting a different kind of encounter. His face fell when he saw me standing beside Kelly. What's he doing here? Matt knows everything, Kelly said, pushing past him into the suite. We decided to handle this together. Derek's confusion was almost comical. He'd been expecting a tearful victim with a briefcase full of cash. Instead, he got a united front that didn't fit his script. Look, man, he said to me, this is between Kelly and me. You don't want to get involved. Actually, I'm already involved. See, when someone blackmails my wife, it becomes my problem too. I pulled out my phone and showed him photos of his other victims. Recognize any of these women, Derek? Jennifer Walsh from the marketing firm downtown, Lisa Chen from the medical practice on Elm Street, Sarah Morrison. Wait, isn't that your ex-wife? His face went pale. How did you? I'm a journalist. Was a journalist. Research is what I do. I scrolled through more photos. You've been running this scam for years, haven't you? Seduce successful women, document the affairs, then demand payment for silence. That's not... 20,000 seems to be your standard rate. Though I notice you've been getting greedier lately. Inflation, I suppose. Derek looked between Kelly and me, finally understanding that he'd lost control of the situation. What do you want? Kelly opened the briefcase, revealing the fake money in the recorder. We want you to confess, on tape. Everything, the seduction, the photos, the blackmail, all of it. And if I don't? I pulled out another phone and showed him a partially composed email. Then this evidence goes to the police, the local newspaper, and every woman in your contact list. Your choice. For a moment, I thought he might try to fight. Derek was bigger than me, younger, and probably stronger, but he was also stupid, and he'd built his entire scheme on intimidation rather than actual power. Fine, he said finally, but I want guarantees. You get your confession, then this ends. No police, no newspapers. Deal, Kelly said, pressing record. What followed was 15 minutes of the most satisfying testimony I'd ever heard. Derek laid out his entire operation, how he targeted women, gained their trust, documented their affairs, then leveraged their fear of exposure into cash payments. How many women? I asked. 12, maybe 15. I didn't keep exact count. How much money total? About 200,000 over 3 years. Kelly's sharp intake of breath was audible on the recording. She'd thought she was Derek's only victim, not just the latest in a long line of successful women he'd exploited. When the confession was complete, Derek looked deflated, smaller somehow. "So what now? Now you disappear," I said. "Leave town, find a new line of work, and pray none of your victims decide to press charges anyway." In the recording. Insurance. Behave yourself, and it stays private. 'Cause problems for anyone, and it becomes very public very quickly. Derek nodded miserably. We left him in the hotel room, probably wondering how his foolproof scheme had collapsed so completely. "That felt good," Kelly said as we walked to the elevator. "We're not finished yet. Brianna's still out there, and she's the one who started this whole mess." Kelly smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. "What did you have in mind?" "Something poetic. She wanted to destroy our marriage using information and manipulation. Let's see how she likes being on the receiving end." Brianna's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown, all chrome and leather and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased her success. I'd been here before, years ago, when Kelly first started at the law firm. Back then, Brianna had treated me with polite condescension. Today would be different. "Matt." She looked genuinely surprised when her secretary announced me. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to thank you," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Thank me? For what?" "For opening my eyes about Kelly." "You were right. She did deserve better than what she was getting from our marriage." Brianna's smile was cautious. "I'm glad you see it that way. Some men would be bitter about their wives finding happiness elsewhere." "Oh, I was bitter at first. But then I realized Kelly's affair with Derek was the best thing that could have happened to us." "Derek?" Brianna's carefully composed expression flickered. "I thought Kelly was interested in Alex." "She is, but Derek came first. You remember Derek Morrison, don't you? From Elite Fitness. The one you introduced to Kelly 3 months ago." Now Brianna looked genuinely confused. "I never introduced Kelly to anyone named Derek." I pulled out my phone and showed her photos from Kelly's social media. Images I'd carefully cropped to show Brianna, Kelly, and Derek together at various events. "Really? Because Kelly remembers it differently. She said you specifically recommended Derek as someone who could show her what she was missing at home." Brianna studied the photos, her PR-trained mind clearly racing through possibilities. "Matt, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Has there?" "Because Derek told a very different story when we spoke yesterday." I played a carefully edited portion of Derek's confession, the part where he mentioned being introduced to Kelly by her friend from the law firm. I'd removed any reference to names, letting Brianna's guilty conscience fill in the blanks. "He's lying," Brianna said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is he?" "Because here's what I think happened. You've been angry about that Councilman Richards story for years. You blamed me for destroying your client and costing your firm money. So when you met Derek and realized what kind of man he was, you saw an opportunity for revenge." "That's ridiculous. You introduced him to Kelly, encouraged the affair, probably even suggested she ask for an open marriage. You wanted to humiliate me, destroy my marriage, and watch me suffer." Brianna stood abruptly, walking to the window with her back to me. "You're paranoid, Matt. Kelly's affair has nothing to do with some imagined grudge." "Then explain this." I placed a manila envelope on her desk. Inside were bank records showing payments from Brianna's personal account to Derek Morrison, 5 payments over 3 months, totaling $15,000. "Consulting fees," she said without looking at the documents. "For what kind of consulting?" "Derek owns a gym, Brianna. What could he possibly consult about for a PR firm?" She turned back to face me, and for the first time, her composure cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The Richards scandal nearly destroyed my career. I lost clients, credibility, everything I'd worked for. So you decided to destroy my marriage in return. I wanted you to know how it felt to lose something important, to watch your life fall apart because of someone else's choices." The admission hung between us like a challenge. Brianna had just confessed to orchestrating Kelly's affair as revenge for a news story I'd written years earlier. "Well," I said, standing to leave. "Mission accomplished. My marriage is over, Kelly's humiliated, and I've learned exactly what my friends really think of me." "Matt, wait." "Don't worry, Brianna. I'm not going to expose you. What would be the point? You've already won." I left her office with the envelope still on her desk, knowing she'd spend the rest of the day wondering what other evidence I might have collected. The beauty of the plan was that Brianna's paranoia would do most of the work for me. By evening, my phone was buzzing with panicked messages from her. By the next morning, she'd called Kelly 6 times, trying to determine how much we knew and what we planned to do about it. She's terrified, Kelly reported over breakfast. She keeps asking if you're planning to write another story about her. Am I? Kelly studied my face carefully. Are you? I smiled and returned to my newspaper. I don't need to write anything, Kelly. Brianna's guilt will destroy her more effectively than any story I could publish. And I was right. Within a week, Brianna had made 3 professional mistakes, small things that wouldn't have mattered normally. But in her paranoid state, they compounded into larger problems. She started avoiding Kelly, canceling lunch dates, and declining invitations, afraid that any contact might provide more ammunition for my imaginary revenge plot. The friendship that had lasted since law school crumbled under the weight of Brianna's guilty conscience and Kelly's growing understanding of how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. I feel like such a fool, Kelly said one evening as we sat in our living room. Really sat together for the first time in months. You were a victim, not a fool. Brianna played a long game, and she played it well. What happens now? With us, I mean. I considered the question carefully. The anger was still there, along with hurt and disappointment. But underneath those feelings was something else, a recognition that we'd both been players in someone else's game. I don't know, I said honestly, but I think we owe it to ourselves to find out. Kelly nodded, and for the first time in months, the silence between us felt comfortable rather than hostile. Outside, Alex's apartment windows glowed warmly in the evening darkness. Tomorrow, I'd have to thank them for their help and figure out what their friendship might mean going forward. But tonight, it was enough to sit beside my wife and recognize that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let your enemies win. The Zentendru de Shumdendomed, November 12, 2025, 11 hours, 44 minutes and 14 seconds.